SARS travel advisory. One of the things that may have convinced them is the government's plan for stricter screening at airports. That may include installing thermal imaging cameras to spot passengers who have fevers and therefore may have SARS. Kantronic Systems of Vancouver have been approached about supplying the equipment, and Ron Newport is a vice president at Kantronic, and he joins me now from Vancouver. So Ron, can you talk me through how your thermal imaging system actually works?
Yes, I can. The thermal imaging system is quite basic. Most people are familiar with a camcorder, and you can see the camera there, and it's a little larger than a camcorder, but instead of getting a visual image, what we get is a thermal image. And so we see areas, warmer areas, cooler areas on a person's face, or on anything actually that we're looking at. So that's basically how it works.
So how would somebody who did have a high fever and may have SARS, how would they appear to you through the camera?
Okay, that's a very interesting image. It's not just one section of an elevated temperature. What we'll actually see is the whole face will become warm. And what happens is the features actually start to disappear on the face. Why this camera is so good at detecting individuals potentially with SARS is that it can detect temperatures very slight variations, less than 1/10 of a degree. So we can set it up to be very sensitive or less sensitive. Like we can see differences like I'm doing on my face right now and making pattern changes on my face with my hand. And so it becomes very obvious that we have a thermal difference with a passenger coming off a plane, for instance.
So Ron, talk me through what happens then if the camera operator does spot somebody with a high temperature.
As the people are walking through, you get the operator focuses it on the people's upper body portions. And as they start to move through, what we're going to see is that overall warming picture. And that is going to be highlighted. We can put a noise, an audible noise on the camera that beeps. It tells you it's over. I would think mostly we're going to have an operator in most of these cases, and the operator will see it and then isolate that person.
But Ron, I guess that temperature fluctuates for many different people throughout the times of the day for many different reasons. How accurate do you know your test is?
Okay, that's a good question actually, because one of the things we're looking for is not just a zonal temperature. We can tell people if they've got headaches, but that's a zone temperature. But there are other reasons that people will appear warm. They might just have influenza, and that's a similar pattern because it's a fever-based problem. So we will see them, and the whole aspect is mass screening to pull the people off to do further tests, and that I think is the significance of this.
So why is your system better than just measuring someone with a thermometer?
Well, actually a thermometer works as well, but the whole thing here is the mass screening aspect. We can have many people being screened and evaluated in a very quick period of time.
And what about cost?
Well, cost is significantly different than a thermometer. The cost in the cameras are somewhere around 20,000, 25,000 Canadian for a typical camera such as this.
Now, Ron, I understand the system is being used in other parts of the world at the moment. How are people finding it?
Well, actually, from what I'm hearing, it's working out very well. And it's, as you said, it's being used in areas such as Singapore. It's being used in Hong Kong. I got a phone call from one of my students in Taiwan, and they're looking at using it now in Taiwan as well, and obviously China. And they're having very good results with it overall.
Great. Well, thank you very much for telling us about it today, Ron.
You're welcome.
I've been speaking to Ron Newport. He's a vice president at Kantronic Systems, and he joined me from Vancouver.
It's been almost a week now since the World Health Organization advised people not to travel to Toronto. And each day the travel advisory is in effect, the more damaging it is to the provincial and the national economy. Deb has more about that in tonight's NewsHour Insight.
You're right about that, Tony, but Canada did get a bit of good news from the WHO today. In today's briefing, World Health Organization officials said the worst of the epidemic appears to be over in Canada, Hong Kong, and Singapore. But the travel advisory in Toronto still in effect. And there are some who believe Canada's SARS outbreak has been blown out of proportion and isn't nearly as serious as the situation in Asia.
At Singapore's airport and others in Asia, the infrared camera measuring body temperature is becoming the frontline weapon to stop SARS. In Canada, we're also looking at the idea.
If there's more that can be done, especially as it relates to reassuring the public and as a matter of public confidence, then that will be done.
The top left corner of the screen is the current facial reading of this person.
The infrared system measures the temperature of a person's face, which is slightly lower than body temperature. It takes just a second. If it's normal, the person has no fever. The camera and technology has been around for years, developed by a Coquitlam company that is now swamped with inquiries and orders from Asian countries who want the cameras to fight SARS.
Just Hong Kong alone, we get one request from Hong Kong. They're talking about 200 systems, and they're going to be installed at airports and at railway stations, subway stations, and so this is a really, currently it's probably the best available mass screening device for fever-like symptoms.
In BC today, we're reporting 4 probable cases of SARS and 63 suspected cases. In its diligence to warn travelers coming to Canada, what the World Health Organization hasn't been reporting is 2 of those probable cases have been sent home from hospital, and 52 of the suspected cases are recovering. They never had SARS, and that angers one health official.
By continuing to report people that we've investigated is wrong, and it's going to lead us to damage things like our cruise industry, our tourism industry, and that. We do not have, in the 60s, we have 4 cases total.
That message isn't getting through to Taiwan, which took the unbelievable step today of banning Canadians from traveling from Canada to Taiwan, designating all of Canada a SARS zone. And all Taiwan nationals traveling back from Canada will face a 10-day quarantine. Hard hit is China Airlines, which flies there from Vancouver. It may have to cut back on flights.
Obviously, economically, it hurts us all. It hurts ourselves. It hurts the other airlines. It's most unfortunate.
In Toronto, Ontario's chief health officer was sprinting to catch a flight to Geneva. With a number of SARS cases in decline here, he wants to convince the World Health Organization to lift its travel advisory to Toronto. SARS cases are also in decline in Vietnam, but not China, where they're building a new hospital with 3,000 beds for SARS patients. There are 8,000 in quarantine in Beijing. China's economy is showing signs of decline. This is the real hotspot for the spread of SARS, and the World Health Organization is worried.
The public health system in China has been underfunded for the last 20 years, and I do believe that this public health system is barely ready to deal with a disease like SARS.
Over at Cantronics in Coquitlam, they can produce 50 to 100 infrared temperature screening cameras a month. And as